What we're going to do in this session is go over visualization in Python. And this is one of the most exciting and fast-moving areas of Python. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you an overview of the basic categories of visualization in Python, the approaches to visualization, so that you can then decide what you want to use in your business, in your work. So what we're going to go over here are the libraries Matplotlib, Seaborn, Pandas, Plotnine, Bokeh, Plotly, and we'll talk a little bit about Plotly's Dash. Now, there's actually a great blog post which has a very nice visualization from Anaconda. We'll talk about Anaconda next session. But what this shows is basically what we're going to talk about here are two sort of frameworks, Matplotlib and then JavaScript, right? So Matplotlib was an original it was one of the first visualization libraries in Python, and Seaborn and Pandas kind of wrap this to give it additional functionality and make it a little bit easier to work with. And then we have a separate set of visualization frameworks that are based on JavaScript. So if you remember JavaScript, separate programming language, language of the interactive web. This is JavaScript is what allows websites to be interactive, to react to you and so forth. So what's going on over here is that we have some libraries that have wrapped JavaScript functionality to allow you to call that from Python. So this is going to be like Plotly. We'll look at Plotly and Bokeh, and what this is going to allow you to do is the underlying visualizations in JavaScript, but we can control the visualization through Python. This is also kind of what's going on in D3.js, but we won't talk about D3.js. This is a great framework, but particularly if you're willing to write the JavaScript. But we're going to look at simply calling JavaScript from Python. So this is a little bit of the landscape, and this is going to make sense when we start talking about Seaborn and Pandas, and then switching gears to Plotly and JavaScript frameworks. Excellent. So first thing here, we can go ahead and create some random numbers. So we'll use the random from the NumPy package, and then we'll create random x is just 100 samples from a normal distribution with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 0.04, and then y is equal to x plus some randomness, right? So we should have x and y variables, but they should we should kind of see them going up at a 45-degree line on our scatter plots. First to talk about is Matplotlib. So again, it's older and somewhat more difficult to use than other libraries. However, it's very widely used, right? So and it forms a basis for a lot of other visualizations. So to do so, we can import pyplot as PLT, and then we can create a simple scatter plot like this. We should get something slightly different. There we go. So we're just this is a scatter plot. X is, remember, our variable names are x and y. So this is our x and y right there. We can put some labels on it, and then a simple title, right? So you probably can't see it very well, but it's right up there, and then x and y are labeled. However, like I say, this is a basic framework, so it's somewhat harder to customize. So what people have done is built extensions, wrapped Matplotlib, and given it additional functionality and made it a little bit easier to use. And so one such package is Seaborn, right? So we can go ahead and import Seaborn. It's commonly imported as SNS, and then we can create the same plot by simply saying SNS scatter plot y and then calling set title on that. So we can go ahead and do that, and then we see the same exact scatter plot. But we can see here, and importantly, you realize that okay, well, Seaborn isn't a separate framework than Matplotlib. It's building on it. So now, what we can also do, and what gives Seaborn a little bit more functionality, like I say, is let's say we want to create a group. So this is just going to be a group is going to be I'm rounding this, so this is just going to be a series of zeros and ones. So to show you, why don't we go ahead put a group there, so you can just see it's just 1 zeros, 1 zeros. So what I want to do is color the scatter plot dependent on the group, right? So we can go ahead and do that by simply so the only thing that's changed between the previous call is we have hue is equal to group, right? So we can go ahead and do that, and we're seeing it's the same scatter plot, but now it's coloring it dependent on whether it's in the 0 group or the 1 group, zeros and blues, ones and orange. So what Seaborn really provides is just ease of functionality to start doing things like that. But again, we still have this sort of static plot. We're still producing, there's no interactivity to the plot, as you can tell. As I mouse and I'm clicking, it's not interactive. Now, we've talked a lot about Pandas. Pandas does have plotting functionality, and again, it's based on Matplotlib, right? So Pandas basically says, okay, well, we'll use Matplotlib to give you ways to visualize data frames. So we can go ahead and import, we've already imported NumPy, but import Pandas, and then create the same scatter plot in Pandas, where we just have our series and call plot scatter, and we get that same scatter plot. Switching gears a little bit here, there's been a very successful visualization. It's a visualization library, but also an approach to visualization, which is ggplot2 by Hadley Wickham in RStudio. And so this is, again, it's for the R language. It's for a different programming language. So it's been very popular. It's easy to use. It's it's expressive in that you can really, with very little code, really sort of show the data like you would like to see it. So this ggplot2 package has been ported over into Python under Plotnine. So we can go ahead and import Plotnine, and we can create, so what this is using is R-like syntax. So you have to get a little, to use this, you have to start learning a little bit about ggplot2, and this would be the aesthetic. So there's a little bit here. You have to decide that you want to, and what happened here? XYG. Oh, I haven't created that. So, I'll go ahead and I'll factor back. You saw that chart. I just must have created XYG on the fly. And what I should do, maybe I can create it here, XYG, and I'll go ahead. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll re-get that, put that chart up, and I'll put this code in here so you see it. But you saw that chart, so that's just a it's in the style of ggplot, and but again, if you were to actually want to use that, that would be kind of a choice to go a little bit away from the direction of Seaborn and so forth, and learn a little bit of kind of the R ggplot2 approach to graphing. So now we'll go ahead and shift gears. So those have been static graphs, and again, mostly built off of Matplotlib. Now we're going to move to JavaScript and interactive charts. In reality, this is where I would sort of guide you, again, depending on your business needs. But let's take a look at what would happen if we used a JavaScript type library. So we have to do some imports. This is just to show the figure in this notebook here. This is the actual, I want to bring in some themes, right? And then I just have to tell it to, so this is just some boilerplate to get themes and also to output into the notebook. So I'm going to set the theme to light minimal. This is just to give the tools in the chart, which is going to be over here. The actual chart, right, is going to be here. I'm just charting X and Y with a fill and no line color. So if I go ahead and run that, right, so we get this interactive chart. So you can see it's the same scatter plot as we have above. However, now there's some sort of interactivity to it. So we can see where the mouse is moving. We can pan it, so I can kind of drag it around, and I can zoom. I should be able to choose portions, right? Choose certain plots, subsets of those plots. So now we have a whole set of functionality, right? So I'm zooming in on certain sections. I'm zooming the plot. So now, again, given that this is built off of JavaScript, we can interact with it, right? Also, what I have here is, again, it's very simple to start, and there's a lot. Once we have JavaScript, we can have, it's very easy to change themes. It's generally, ggplot2 is also very easy to change themes, but we can easily change themes, and again, we still have all this functionality. So this is the real difference between a static chart like we would see in Matplotlib and what becomes available with JavaScript. Now, this isn't the only JavaScript library. We can do the same thing in Plotly. So import Plotly as px, and then again, a simple call to a scatter and providing a title to it is going to create a nice scatter plot. And again, we have this interactivity. We have a lot of the same type of functionality here. We can, if we want, we can download the image. We can pan it around just like we did before, select and so forth. So a lot of standard functionality we have here. Good. Showing a little bit of creating the groups. So we created groups before. Out here, I created the XYG group here. So once I do this, I can run above, which would be nice. So we can create these groups. And just like, right, we can, just like above, we have these 0-1 groups, and again, we still have this functionality to zoom in on certain portions and so forth. Now that I have that, let me go ahead and I can run that. I realize I defined it there. I'll move the definition of it up. Good. All right, so again, this is just the ggplot style. So the last thing to talk about is a little bit, is talk about these another level of interaction, I should say. So these charts are interactive where the data is here, and then we can look at the data and we can select the data. However, with Plotly's dash, what we can do is we can, let's say, change the data set, change the underlying data set. And instead of actually trying to force a dash app into this notebook, I just provided a link to the gallery here, and to just give you an idea of what you can do with this. Now, this is slightly more of a investment in time, but what we have in Plotly's dash is we have the actual graphic here. However, we can interact with the data set, let's say. So I can choose, this is going to look at an actual versus predicted interest rate. This isn't important. The only important thing is to realize we can start to allow the user to make choices. And this is specifically about the loan that they're going to get here. And then submit that, and it'll create this graphic for certain loan amounts, certain annual incomes, and so forth. So within Plotly, this is now a web framework, but all written in Python. So you can add this level of interaction. So depending on your business, like what I used to do is working on wind farms, right? I might want to say, if we were going to calculate maybe expected prices or something, you could put in the season and the location, and then you can get maybe an expected price per megawatt hour or something like that. So they become extremely useful because you can put these up on your corporation's internet, your internal internet. So this is a great way. This is a little bit beyond the scope of to actually explain how this app works. be beyond the scope of this course here. But this is definitely a very good place to go. In this, again, this also shows you the type of visualizations you can do. Again, this is JavaScript, but called from Python. Excellent. So as an exercise, a simple exercise, you can use the data, the random data that we have here, but try to create a line chart. Now what I have here is X and Y. So what you can do is create a line chart just for Y and have X be the observation. So we have 100 random numbers. So just for each random number, and then show a line chart, right? And just modify all these to show a line chart.